Ads have been around for a really long time, centuries even, and they have become something that is very, very prevalent and very important in today's world. They drive people to buy things, but they also drive people to change the way they think, the way they act. And this can be good sometimes, like for example, when you see an ad about different health topics, or maybe about climate change, or something that is really relevant in today's world that you might not have known if it weren't for the ad. But it can also be really bad when ads tend to use problems just to make a profit. And this is something that sadly is very prevalent in today's world. Now, ads influence not only those who see the ad once or twice, but in the long run, advertising ends up permanently influencing a lot of people, especially the younger generation, which would include us. And even though everyone could be impacted and negatively influenced by these ads, a large amount or a very important number of these people are girls and women who will find that a lot of ads are catered towards them. For example, in the beauty industry, everything that has to do with fashion, makeup, and even different types of health things, they can cater or target women and girls to buy their items, their products, or their services in a way that is not really the best, right? So, for example, nowadays when you want to buy a certain product, like skincare, for example, you're going to see a lot of people who talk about this product kind of as a solution, or as if it was the only good, like if it was the only thing that could lead you to having something that is ideal, something that is wanted. And in a way, it ends up portraying the idea that if you're not a certain way, and say if you have acne, or if you're overweight, or if you have this type of hair, or this type of, I don't know, feature, then you're not as good or not as beautiful as the people who don't. And this has become very, very common in this type of industry that is going on right now. And sadly, since a lot of advertising happens on social media, and social media is something that everybody uses, well, you're obviously going to have a lot of advertising being fed to people every single day, even if they don't notice it, or if they obviously don't want it to be this way. And what does this create, right? It creates this very detached sense of thinking, a very just a very fake way of seeing the world. But sadly, since a lot of people who are exposed to these ads are not necessarily mature enough to understand this and to really be able to separate what is online and what is in the real world, this creates a very negative effect on them. So, for example, we have that maybe the most important thing is that it creates unrealistic expectations, not only on products and on things that they see, but also on themselves. So, for example, there has been this trend. Well, it's not really a trend, but it's something that's going on a lot nowadays. Is that little girls, each time younger and younger, tend to want to look more grown up, or have or buy certain things that aren't really made for their certain age. But since they are fed a lot of media that talks about these items and these things, they obviously are going to want to have it. Because if you're saying, oh, you're not as cool, or you're not as pretty, or you're not as whatever, if you don't have this thing or do this thing or whatever thing, then obviously these kids are going to try to replicate the behaviors that they're seeing online. And this is very dangerous, especially because, well, typically children don't really measure the importance of things, so they can give more importance or less importance to things that they really shouldn't. So, for example, there's been these little girls, typically from 8 to 14 years old, who shouldn't necessarily be buying anything really makeup related, or they shouldn't really be doing too much. but they're already buying anti-aging products, and they're really just absorbed by this whole idea that they need it, because if not, they're gonna look old and wrinkly. Which takes me to my next topic, which is that there's been this shift of the beauty standard, but it's always been this way. It's just that nowadays it's become even more popular, more important to people, the whole looking young thing, right? So they say if you have like little, what do you call it, chicken feet on your eyes, then oh, you look really bad and you look super old, and you can't have dark circles because it makes you look halfway dead, and it's just really bad stuff that companies obviously feed off of because it's what makes them gain money, right? So this extreme focus on looks has, well, always has been a problem, right? But it has become even stronger nowadays, and this also leads to different things like objectification and sexualization, which are obviously terrible. But not only do they harm the women themselves who have to grow up seeing these types of things portrayed, but it also harms the whole generation, because even if for one or another reason you have a boy seeing all of this really just harmful content, they're gonna grow up to think that women are supposed to look perfect, and they're not supposed to have little spots on their face or eye bags on their eyes or split ends or anything. And it also creates, as I said before, very unrealistic expectations for them, which obviously hurts women a lot more than it hurts the men. But it is something that is also should be taken into account, and it kind of opens up to a lot more problems. But generally, it just leads to the objectification and sexualization of women, which is never good. And since a lot of the content that is used in advertisements is really just, it has a target audience, but it still is sent everywhere. So there isn't too much control on who ends up seeing these ads and who ends up believing the stuff that they subconsciously or end up portraying, whether really they want to or not. So this leads to the next problem about advertisement and how it can negatively impact women, is that a lot of the advertisements nowadays, even if people try to pretend that they're not, they have very limited representation of the people who would actually want to maybe buy the product or do the thing or whatever. So for example, there are a lot of brands, I guess this goes two ways now. There are a lot of brands who strictly avoid anyone who is not the beauty standard, whether this be the type of what race you are or how you look. But there are also different companies who sort of do have a bit of representation, but they use it to warp your ideas and your opinions on this this product or this company. And this can really be harmful, because at the end of the day, the people who are looking to buy the product or the service are going to be partially blinded by this, right? And it's just not healthy at all, because they might end up saying, oh, but you know, there are black people in the ads, why would they be, I don't know, helping child labor or something like that. So obviously that can also be very bad, because in a way it just creates this halo effect on those who are not particularly doing, or those who are apparently being a better brand when they're not. And something else that is very important is that nowadays a lot of marketing and advertising is done using famous people or influencers, or people who are generally have a bit of more of a public eye on them, right? And a good example of this could be, for example, when someone who has really long, luscious hair, and they have the most beautiful hair ever, and they end up being on an ad for, I don't know, a shampoo or a hair product, and they're like, yeah, this thing is great, this thing is awesome, you have to buy it now, I've been using it for years, and they haven't. they obviously haven't. And maybe they've had different procedures done. Maybe they've got a keratin treatment. Or maybe they were just born like this. Maybe they have really good hair care that is outside of this. But if you're just don't know anything about this person and you just look at the ad and you see this person with beautiful luscious hair and you see this one product, you're obviously going to think it's due to this product and you're going to buy the product, right? But these different ideas are portrayed when it's not reality, it's not the truth. A lot of stuff that is shown on advertisements is either takes a lot of time or a lot of money or a lot of procedures to get these types of things that would be portrayed as natural beauty, right? So this can go from anything really. It can go from different types of teeth whiteners to hair products, as I said, to makeup, to even those ads that you see for like losing weight and stuff. They all have to do with this, right? So another very big problem in all of this is that and I guess maybe the thing that comes out from all of this is that advertisements like this, which are really just poorly made, and which are the vast majority of them, use insecurity to promote stuff, and this obviously in a way enforces beauty standards and obviously gives this type of pressure to people that they absolutely have to comply or to fit into these certain beauty standards, and if not, then they're just not worthy. And a great example of this, well, there's this one brand that has been around for a little over a decade and it's become quite popular, which is called Brandy Melville, and they make clothes, which, even if it sounds very crazy, and it does, they make clothes that only fit one size. Like, typically when you go to buy clothes, you have a small, a medium, a large, whatever. No, they don't have this. They just have one shade, one size, and if you don't fit into that size, well, you can't buy the product because there's only one size for every single item that they sell, like all of the clothes basically. And this size is not particularly, let's say, like everyone's size, obviously. The sizes that they sell are for very, very thin women. And this is a huge problem. Just saying it is a huge problem. But it becomes even worse when you sit back, take a little bit of a look, and realize that all of the clothes that are being sold are targeted towards teenagers and young women. So basically, there's just kind of like if you don't fit into this, then you can't wear it, obviously. And it creates this sense of just excluding all of the people, all of the girls who don't fit into the clothes. And this has become, well, it used to be a bit more of a problem before because the brand isn't as popular now. But it was particularly dangerous because you would see a lot of girls who would really do their best to fit into these clothes, and they would even starve themselves just to fit into a t-shirt, like a white plain t-shirt, which is really dumb in my opinion. But it creates this sense of, like, I don't know the word, I forgot the word. But when you treat something as better than the others, like, kind of like just excluding all of the other people who don't fit into it, quite literally, fit into it. And the even bigger problem with this brand, well, equally as bad problem with this brand, is that the brand was created a few years ago, and they kind of built up a reputation, until a lot of girls who used to work in that same shop started, like, saying the truth about the shop. And that's where you find out, well, something that is kind of obvious but is really just wrong, is that the people who this brand would cater to were just skinny white women, like the typical blonde girl California aesthetic. This was something sold to millions of young girls, but it also emphasized a lot even on racism, because the only girls who were ever shown on these ads were skinny white girls, or girls with Caucasian features or really light skin, right? And this was a huge problem. But it was even worse when it came out to the light, that the people of color and people who weren't not these beauty standards, or people who were even a little bit chubbier than the ideal girls, were not allowed to be seen. Even like the workers were not allowed to be seen by the people who, like, by the customers. So if there's like a store up here and down here there's like a warehouse, or the other people who were not like beautiful and perfect would be in the warehouse where no one would see them. And yeah, overall this brand is very shady. It's not really good. It's very popular, but it's just sad. And it's even worse when you realize the next thing, when you find out about it, is that the owner of this company is not even a woman. It's not even a young person. It's a middle-aged man who's balding. And yeah, there had been some different cases of different problems with the girls, because but yeah, it's very sad, and this brand is extremely popular, and it's just influencing thousands and thousands of girls every single day, right? So yeah, talk about middle-aged men who run a very important company that is catered towards women. Victoria's Secret. Victoria's Secret was actually made by a man, and the biggest problem I would say with Victoria's Secret is that it in the early 2000s, when everyone was absolutely very, very skinny and it was just body shaming galore, they created some of the most strict ideations of beauty that even to this day are still very, very prominent, right? And I think last year or something, they had a rebranding thing that was the complete opposite of the whole you have to be skinny and blonde thing. But it did not go well. For what reason? Because they were not skinny and blonde. So it just shows that a lot of these big companies have a huge impact on people, and sadly they were always going to prioritize profit over whoever's going to buy or whoever's going to see these ads, right? And sadly, these ads, a lot of ads, the majority of advertising today is not made to help you, to really help you. It's just made to make you buy stuff. And this includes, well, at least in the beauty industry, it really just it created this whole mistaken idea of what beauty really is, and it just completely forgets like the most important parts of a person, of a woman, and it just totally kind of ruined beauty, honestly, because nowadays a lot of ads, they just create a lot of trends that are very unnecessary. So for example, back then, like in the 2010s, there was this one trend of having a thigh gap, which is really just not good at all, because this isn't necessarily something that is a normal thing to be trending, and a lot of girls obviously had a lot of health issues because they forced themselves to fit into this standard. So for example, that was a very extreme trend. There's also those trends where the people were like showing off their noses. A couple of years ago, there was this trend in like TikTok where people would like show off how pretty and perfect their nose was, and all of the people with the pretty and perfect noses were the ones who were white. So yeah, the same with basically everything, But sadly, this is a problem that has been going on for decades and decades and decades. But it has just become even more prominent in the last, I would say, 20 years, like the last 2-3 decades, because there's just so much stuff going on online nowadays, and it's just become like every single day you're bombarded with advertisement, right? And sadly, this advertisement is not, well, it is made for you to see it, but it's not made to help you at all. So, with so much negative stuff, what should we do to avoid being influenced so negatively by all of these advertisements? Well, sadly, it's not very easy to do because, as I said, they're everywhere. But I would say that the first step, well, the most extreme step, is to just avoid social media and not be too absorbed into it, which sadly is very difficult for the younger generations. And there's also been a lot of debate on, well, not debate, but a lot of news on really small children and their presence online and how this is obviously terrible for them. But if you don't want to do that, then it's very important that you have, it's very important to encourage social media literacy. What does that mean? Well, it means not believing everything you see, and even if it looks real, it's probably not. Like, there are filters that can be undetectable, and a lot of people lie on the internet just to make money, because, well, social media is, well, has become a job, really, and a lot of people gain money by it. Even if you may think they don't, they probably do. And stuff like sponsorships is probably the most profitable way of using social media, I would say. And you don't really have to say that you're being sponsored to say something, even if you are nowadays. So this can be terrible for a bunch of reasons that we already mentioned. And then another good idea is to stop supporting the brands that you see are doing this. So, for example, I don't know if you see that. For example, there was this one beauty influencer called Michaela or something like that. Anyway, she was this American woman who did a lot of beauty reviews and things like that. And then one day she came out with like a blush that was in collaboration with some type of really big brand. And she said, "Oh, this is the best blush." Obviously, 'cause she made it. And the shade is great for everyone. And this shade, shade is going to suit all skin tones, right? And then the people of other skin tones, darker skin tones, started trying out this new blush and realized it was not for all skin tones. So once you realize this, and you just see that there are a lot of there's a lot of fake advertising nowadays. Once you start to just see the big companies, well, usually the big companies, that are in charge or that have a lot of fake advertising, then you should stop supporting them, stop buying from them, or at least stop, following what they're making and what they're releasing. And the good thing is that advertising does allow a lot of small businesses to release products and make their own thing, And a lot of these small businesses are targeted more towards actual people and not just, Instagram models and celebrities. So that's a really good tip, to support real beauty, support brands that support real beauty. And of course, probably the most important one is to not be influenced by all of the stuff that is going on with all of this advertising that is obviously fake, because there's a lot of it, much more than we realize. And the best way to do this is to encourage self-acceptance, right? So once you realize that, there's nothing wrong with your eyes, there's nothing wrong with your feet, there's nothing wrong with your arms or with your whatever, once you realize this, then you're going to be a lot stronger and, in a way, immune to all of the germs that these advertisements try to fill you up with. And that's how you don't get sick. So a lot of like a lot of companies and different products just really feed off of negative feelings, because it's the easiest thing, it's the easiest way to convince someone to buy something that you want them to buy, because you're making them think that they need it in order to be better, or to look better, or to just fit in a little bit more. And once you realize that you don't need to, have a million different face creams for different things, and, certain things of like pieces of clothing, at the end of the day, this is like really important. At the end of the day, you're not supposed to fit into the clothing, because the clothing is supposed to fit you. And if you can't, if you can't fit into this one really niche brand of clothing that is actually really overpriced as well, then you shouldn't really be fazed by it, because at the end of the day, it's not necessary. You don't need to look a certain way in order to be able to buy something that you like. And if you're being influenced to believe this, then you probably shouldn't be supporting that brand. And that is all. Thank you for listening to today's little podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. And remember that next time you feel just really targeted by an ad, or you feel like the need to do something or to buy something because it's what everyone is saying, and then it's not your fault. It's not something that's wrong in you. It's just capitalism. Capitalism, and you should not really pay attention to that. Thank you.